Good morning and welcome to Game Day U. We are here at the University of Oklahoma on the South Oval right outside of Gaylord Hall. I'm Caroline Grace here alongside Parker Thune and Shannon Earhart. Guys, now last week we're recovering from a loss. However, I think I'm doing a little bit better than you guys. I expected this. So how are y'all feeling?
Well, you know, I was going to say nobody saw this coming, Caroline, but props to you. You did see it coming.
And
I don't know how, but...
Yeah, I'm sure you're on your high horse as well.
I'm riding that horse into the sunset, baby. I'm going to take that one all season long.
Unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. I would have never guessed.
Lots that went wrong for the Sooners, and we'll get into that for sure.
Yes, but before we give our take, why don't we go into what some of those guys on the inside had to say about last week's loss to Kansas State?
You know, why does 60 minutes just feel so long to us? Why can we perform at a certain level for stretches? Obviously elite teams and good defenses, which clearly we're not, are able to have a resolve. Don't let one play beat you. Don't let one play turn into two, and have an energy regardless of what's going on.
So there were a lot of moving parts to that upset. So you guys, what did you guys take away from that game? What was the main cause?
I think that the main cause of that loss was Spencer Rattler. He looked like a freshman. He looked scared, and he couldn't get it out of the pocket. It just looked like he was dazed and confused. He moved around a bunch, but he had 3 interceptions. Yes, I understand that it's only his second starting game as a Sooner, but that shouldn't be right, especially as a quarterback who's as good as he is. It looked like he just never built up momentum as well. Too many screen passes that didn't get them anywhere. He just sat in the pocket and wouldn't throw the ball. Looked like he only showed up for 40 minutes of the game, which was unreal to me. Being as good as he is and coming out at a high-level high school, it was tough to watch. And I think Spencer Rattler looked like a freshman.
Well, I would categorically dispute that, Shannon, because if you look at the stat line, Spencer Rattler's first 25 passes didn't hit the ground.
But how many interceptions?
23 for 25, granted the 2 interceptions. The first one was not his fault. That ball was deflected at the line of scrimmage. Can't do anything about that. Second one was just a great defensive play that you have to give credit to the Kansas State defensive back for. The third interception was a bad throw, and I'm willing to acknowledge that. And obviously, you can't expect to win a game when you turn the ball over 4 times as the Sooners did on offense. But the problem wasn't Spencer Rattler. He was 30 for 41, 387 yards and 4 touchdowns. He did as much as anybody to put Oklahoma in a position to win. Were the turnovers costly? Yes. But if Spencer Rattler's not playing the quarterback position, that game's a lot more lopsided last Saturday than it actually was.
But where was the momentum?
I'm going to have to
Where
agree
was
with
the
Parker
momentum
on this one, though. I don't think it was all on him. I think he was not able to utilize
I didn't say it was all on
weapons
him.
that he had.
I didn't say it was all on him. I just said that he looked weak.
But
he looked
I think
dazed.
he's justified in looking like a freshman. I don't think he didn't fulfill any expectations.
Okay, let me jump back in here, because I think the reason you saw Spencer Rattler struggle down the stretch, and I think the reason why you have that sour taste in your mouth about his performance, Shannon, is because the mentality changed for the Sooners at right about the 40-minute mark, with about 5 minutes left in the third quarter, when you started to see Kansas State creep back into that game. Oklahoma laid down and died. Let's call it like it is. Lincoln Riley, Alex Grinch, it starts with a brain trust at the top. Those guys lost the aggressiveness. They lost the competitive edge that put Oklahoma in a position to win that game for the first 2.5 quarters and allowed Kansas State to run rampant all over them over the second half of the third quarter and the fourth quarter. Look, the reality of the situation, Shannon, is that Lincoln Riley and Alex Grinch are 2 real young coaches, 2 real aggressive coaches, 2 guys that bring a unique mentality to the football field and to their respective programs. The thing about it is, you have to sustain that over 60 minutes of play, and they didn't do that. I think when the Sooners went up 35-14 on that Seth McGowan touchdown run, everybody just about took it to the bank that the Sooners were going to walk out of there with the victory, and we heard as much all week from the players and the coaches.
This is just so repetitive at this point. I don't think we can use that as an excuse anymore. Like, we're a championship team, and we have been in the past season, so why does the mentality change just because we're up by 20 points?
And it shouldn't, and that's the thing. And hopefully this is the straw that breaks the camel's back and helps Lincoln Riley and his staff realize, hey, we have to put the pedal to the metal for 60 minutes. We can't cash it in before that horn hits 0.
And I 100% agree with you. I think the mentality was off as well. Yeah, after halftime, you could see that they were lackadaisical, just not ready to play. Something else hit them. But I think that Spencer should have been the one. He's supposed to be a leader, and he's supposed to show up and show out and be that guy for the team. So
okay, but what about
just
your guys
this game,
like
I think
Creed
he'll bounce
Humphrey,
back.
TJ Pledger? They could have all stepped up, and that's what I'm saying. There's no one that's willing to step up and help Spencer Rattler out.
No, it comes back to Lincoln Riley. And
I
I love
agree with
Lincoln
that.
Riley as a
I
head
agree.
coach. Love him as a play caller, love him as a person.
I'm not so
but this
sure
loss is
I'm
on
okay
him.
with his play calling anymore.
Well, exactly. And this loss is on him more than it is on anybody. Because you
100%.
saw the aggressiveness in his play calling disappear once the Sooners got staked to a big lead. Early in the game, you saw the first play from scrimmage for the Sooners was a reverse to Charleston Rambo. They had Rambo throw a pass to Rattler later on.
yeah,
I was not
embarrassing,
expecting that at
yeah.
all.
I love it when Lincoln Riley digs into his bag of tricks because I think it shows just how unique of a mind, of a football mind that he is. I want to see that for 4 quarters. I don't want to see that in the first quarter and then you get back to the standard zone read intermediate passing attack that the Sooners seemed to favor in the second half last week. I want to see that same fire, that same competitive edge in Lincoln Riley's play calling across all 60 minutes of a football game. And
Wouldn't
look,
we all?
Well,
Wouldn't
but
we all?
at what point is the staff or the university going to make that change? Because we see it across the country plenty of times. Happened with Gus Malzahn this year. At what point are we going to say we need to bring someone else in because Lincoln cannot do this on his own?
I don't think we're at that point yet.
I think Lincoln Riley is perfectly capable of calling his own plays as head coach, and I don't think it's fair to put a blanket on all the coaches across the nation that have both the head coach and the offensive coordinator responsibilities. I think there are guys that are better suited for that responsibility than others. There are some guys who look at it as too big a job, and that's fine. Not every circumstance is the exact same. But the reality is there's nobody that Oklahoma could bring in that would be able to call plays better than Lincoln Riley that has
I agree.
as astute a
I
football
agree.
mind as Lincoln Riley. Now, the issue is, like we said, he has to keep the pedal to the metal on the offensive side of the football for 60 minutes. You can't start playing defense when you're on offense.
No.
And that was the issue for Oklahoma on Saturday.
So now that you've brought that up, I'm going to transition onto the defensive side of what went wrong Saturday. Last week, I pointed out that our secondary was going to be a huge problem, that K-State could come in here and do things a certain way and they could win the football game, and that's exactly what they did. There was absolutely no coverage in the backfield by the Sooners, and they were able to throw straight down our throats. Take a look, even a simple angle pattern, and they missed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tackles. And then straight up the left, breaking 2 tackles for a touchdown, and to seal the deal, a 77-yard run. Oklahoma missing 4 opportunities to stop the ball. Now,
That was a tough look.
77 yards is a long way, and we have no one that can keep up. It's just embarrassing at this point. Hats off to Coach Chris Kleinman. He came in here with a plan, and the execution was impeccable. This is going to be a problem for the rest of the season. And like you said, until we can figure out our offense and our special teams, our defense is never going to be able to step
It needs
up
to be
the
all
plate.
3. It needs to be all 3 units working together. The moving parts need to be there, and I think that's also on the coaches, as we just talked
Right.
about. That the coaches need to get into their players' heads and give them a different mentality that they're using now. I think they just need to do a 180, flip it around,
Completely.
and just take ISU head on.
Yeah.
Well, and when you have very egregious errors from all 3 units in the space of a single game, you have to look at that as a leadership issue first and
Exactly.
foremost.
I
and
agree.
So when we saw the offense, the defense, and the special teams make those errors on Saturday, I thought it was indicative of the fact that the Sooners have issues at the top, and maybe they haven't ironed out their message within the locker room yet, because Lincoln Riley on his Monday teleconference said we need to be results, or rather we need to be less results oriented.
Yeah.
And that was a distinctly different message than we heard from Alex Grinch in his Saturday
Exactly. Who all he
post-game
said
press
was we're
conferences.
not producing results. So that's the
They're
issue.
not on the same page.
But I don't think that it's just the staff. I think it goes down to the players too. There's no K9, there's no CD Lamb, there's no Hollywood, there's no Kyler Murray. We have absolutely no one leading this team, I feel like.
Well,
Spencer Rattler, where you at?
and you can chalk that up to a lack of critical mass in terms of the senior class. The Sooners only have 6 seniors listed on their 2 deep depth chart.
And that's where the juniors need to come in.
But that's what exactly. You have
Step up.
3-year starters, Trey Brown, TJ Pledger, that I just do not think are stepping up to the plate, and it's embarrassing.
Agreed. I definitely agree.
But with that being said, we're going to go into a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to take a bigger look at the rest of the Big 12, so stick around. Thank you, Lindsay. Again, I am Caroline Grace alongside Shannon Earhart and Parker Thune. Now, guys, the Big 12 was back and in full swing last weekend. Shannon, what was one of your favorite games to watch?
One of my favorite games to watch was Oklahoma State versus West Virginia. Okay, yes, it was an ugly game. Both teams didn't play great, but it was interesting. It was a nail biter. It was pretty close. And last week, OSU looked bad against Tulsa. That was a close game, if you remember. So that bounce back of them winning really brought it to the table. And also, I have to remind you that history was made for Oklahoma State. It was the first time in years that two running backs rushed for over 100 yards, that being L.D. Brown and Chuba Hubbard. And also, Parker, your guy Shane Illingworth started his first game as a freshman, and dang, did he look pretty good managing the offense. But it also looked like West Virginia got in their own heads a little bit. After that scoop and score fumble recovery in the second quarter, that's when OSU closed the book, and that's when they dubbed. They came out with the dub, and I'm happy that they did. I'm happy that they bounced back and they looked better than they did against Tulsa.
Parker?
Game of the week.
I tell you what, Shannon, you told me to give you a call when that Illingworth take paid off, so I'm dialing you up.
You know what? Wait, now you argued that Chuba Hubbard might be an issue for Oklahoma State.
So where's mine? Excuse me. Hello.
I will say Chuba Hubbard definitely doesn't look like the same running back we saw last year, but like we were saying last week, I think you can just chalk that up to rust at this point.
He's got a different mentality for sure.
Well, everybody's just a little rusty.
I liked what I saw.
Not having nearly as much time to practice in preseason and not getting those spring camps in. So I expect Chuba Hubbard to come around, but
me as well.
I was watching TCU Iowa State last week, more so because it plays directly into the game that we're going to witness tonight up in Ames between the Sooners and the Cyclones. And I tell you what, this was a 37-34 football game, so Big 12 kind of score. But at the same time, I saw some really good defense from Iowa State, particularly from Jaquan Bailey, who actually tied a school record for sacks.
I saw that. That was really impressive. He really stepped up.
I tell you what, this Cyclones defense is going to get after the quarterback, and as poorly as the Sooners played on the offensive line last week, they're going to have their work cut out for them, especially against as phenomenal a talent as Jaquan Bailey. And he's not the only guy that the Cyclones have on that defensive side of the football either. So everybody talks about the Iowa State offense, right? Brock Purdy, Breece Hall. We'll get into that more quite a bit later. Charlie Kohler, of course, the tight end out of Norman North. But the Cyclones can play defense too. And it was quite a game last week against the Horned Frogs. And you know, I don't think the score really indicates where both of those programs are at. I expect both of them to be near the top of the Big 12 by season's end, and it was sloppy on both ends. I think we're seeing sloppy football through 2 weeks from just about everybody, and I think, as we were talking about with Chuba Hubbard, I think that's to be expected to a certain degree, but the Cyclones will get after you in terms of pass rush. They will force turnovers, and Oklahoma's got to be prepared. And the one thing that you got to consider as well, guys, is that programs like Iowa State, like Kansas State, these low-end Big 12 teams, they simply can't recruit as well as a powerhouse like Oklahoma. And so where they have to make their hay is sound, solid, fundamental football, not missing tackles, not missing assignments, not committing penalties. Matt Campbell's Iowa State team is very well coached.
That's where they really shine through, as you were saying, the defense. Also, a guy like Mike Rose, phenomenal. I think that he played great, Jaquan Bailey played great, and then we also see Latrell Bankston play really good too. So I think defense really brought it home for them.
And Greg Ellsworth, one of the most talented safeties in the Big 12 as well.
Oh, yeah.
I also have to say, it's a pretty big statement if you can be a halfway decent team or halfway decent defense in the Big 12. So I'm anxious to see how they play against Oklahoma today. With that being said, I'm going to go with Texas Tech. Now, don't get too excited because we will go further into this a little bit later on. But talking about Big 12 scores, 56-56 is a Big 12 score if I've ever seen one, and that's just going into overtime. I think that both offenses have a better rhythm than most that I've seen at this point, especially compared to OU. And with OU Texas next week, and this game made me worry about the way that people are underrating Sam Ehlinger and also the Tech passing game. Now, Parker, I know you're going to talk about this later, but I think that the receiving unit will be hard for OU to take down. Y'all see how bad we struggle in the backfield. And of course, in normal Big 12 fashion, I don't think that the defense is a worry spot, but both teams have a lot of maturity on the D line, and that will create a lot of pressure for Spencer Rattler. I think that last weekend, Texas Tech, it was a good old-fashioned football game. Both, I have to say, looked better than OU, and that worries me.
Well, you can never take anything to the bank going to Jones AT&T Stadium, which the Sooners have to do this year.
Okay, very, very true.
The tortilla effect.
Yes. Well, and also next week, OU Texas, we both know doesn't matter what the record is on either side of the ball. It's always going to be a shootout. That's why they call it the Red River Shootout.
Always. Let the boys be boys. That's just an absolute dogfight, OU Texas. I can't wait.
Exactly. It makes me nervous. But speaking of Texas Tech, we got to see a little bit extra from both of the teams. So let's go into that a little bit. What did you take away from that game?
First of all, I want to say that score, wow. I cannot believe how high scoring that was. But what I really took out of it is that Sam Ehlinger is a leader, and that absolutely showed. Also want to hint on that his star receiver, time and time again, I said last time, Joshua Moore, who is absolutely terrific. The Longhorns, let me remind you, were down 15 points with 3 minutes to go, and Ehlinger came in clutch. Texas was in the doghouse, and it's hard to come back from a large deficit like that with such short amount of time and just absolutely blow them out of the water. So also, I found a quote, I don't know if you guys saw it, but Sam Ehlinger went to Coach Tom Herman and said that he was going to rally them back in OT, and guess what? It happened. But also, I want to take away that shouldn't happen against Texas Tech. Texas should have blown Tech out of the water, and that didn't happen, but this was a spot where Ehlinger really stepped up and showed his seniority. And his key receiver, Joshua Moore, he caught 3 TDs. Insane. Seriously, the target that is going to be a threat, I think, to Oklahoma, as we were saying, in weeks to come, but Sam Ehlinger, proud of that guy. I think he really he proved himself.
Yeah, and I'll give you credit, Shannon. You shouted out Joshua Moore by name last week.
I did.
He responded with his biggest performance as a Horn.
I literally said, yeah, he's going to be the key receiver, and he was. I forgot who else I pointed out. But yeah, Joshua Moore, forced to be reckoned with. That have to call it.
I honestly think, and I'm sorry to say this, I know you will take it to your grave that Texas will never be back. But the leadership by Sam Ehlinger, and I just think that their offense is completely underrated. I don't think that we're going to be ready for it next week. You can have your own takeaway. But I also think that you're underrating Tech just a little bit by saying Texas should have blown them out of the water. I don't think they're a bad team. I think that game made a name for itself, and I think it was completely accurate. Yeah. And both teams look better than OU, and that should scare you guys.
I will say this. TJ Vasher might be the most talented receiver in the Big 12. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if that guy's in the Biletnikoff Award conversation come season's end. But this game between the Longhorns and the Red Raiders did not do the Big 12 any favors in terms of public perception. Because what is the public perception of the Big 12? Plenty of offense and absolutely no defense. And look, we knew that if Texas got the ball back on that onside kick late in the game, they were going to go down the field and score, because neither team seemed interested in playing any semblance of defense at that point in time. Look, the Big 12 is bad. That's what I took away from this game. If it's not Oklahoma that's going to run away with this conference, and it's not Texas, who is it? There's absolutely no reason.
There's so many surprises with the Big 12. It could be anyone. At this point, where's Kansas?
That's going to be the fun part, is maybe we're just all so bad, and I hate to say this, that it's actually going to be a fun season, because I don't know about you guys, but it was getting kind of boring just watching OU win every year. Texas kind of putting on a show in October, but other than that, maybe this is the season we need to appreciate football again.
Am I watching the Big 12 or am I watching the Mountain West? It's kind of hard to tell at this point. No, there's absolutely no reason why, if Texas wants to be considered a college football playoff contender, which seems to be the expectations that they carry into every single season, even though every single season they tend to underwhelm, there's absolutely no reason why they should have allowed 56 points to a Texas Tech team that had no expectations coming into this season and had just managed to sneak by FCS Houston Baptist 35-33
just embarrassing.
2 weeks prior.
Embarrassing.
Okay, well,
it was an easy team.
Lost to Arkansas State and then came here and beat us.
My favorite my favorite tweet in the aftermath of that game was, Kansas State is the second best team with Kansas State in their name.
Okay, well, I have a real question for you, and I need you to not be biased. Because
I'm
I think
listening.
you're already sweating thinking about OU Texas next weekend.
I'm
Are you
listening.
nervous? Are you nervous that Texas is finally back?
No, not particularly.
Well, our segment got cut short last week, so if you want to say anything about Texas, now's your time.
Texas is not back. There we go. Thank you, Shannon.
We
I'm
will
glad
talk
we're on the
about that
same
more
page
next
here.
week. I'll hold you to that. But my takeaway from that game is going to be the running backs. Now, I went back and forth on this a little bit because I was kind of thinking I wanted to go with the offense, and then I was thinking maybe just Tech's offense, but I think I'm just going to narrow it down to the running backs, and that comes down to the fact that neither quarterback is running a Heisman campaign. That's just, in all honesty, they're pretty average quarterbacks. But they do utilize their weapons. And I liked how you pointed out the leadership of Sam Ehlinger, because I really think that he's taking ownership of his Texas team. He grew up loving Texas. That's his home team. And I'm excited to watch how he leads his team the rest of the season. Now, both aren't amazing rushers, but they have some powerhouses at running back, and I think that both sides were very aggressive on first downs and in the red zone, and I think against OU, that's going to be something that's going to be hard to stop.
I think it is going to be a little scary for OU to have to deal with that, and that's all up to Alex Grinch to step up and lead our defense and put a different mentality into their brains. I mean, that's all there is to it.
I will acknowledge Texas definitely has a Heisman contender on that roster. It's Cameron Dicker.
Oh.
Stop
It's not Sam
it.
Ehlinger.
I don't think
It's
so.
Cameron Dicker.
What is up with
Dicker.
you and getting backup quarterbacks involved?
Okay, so
Why
Cameron
is that
Dick-
your thing?
first off, Cameron
Shane
Dicker is-
Illingworth, I get it.
Cameron
but-
Dicker is the kicker.
Dicker the kicker.
Oh,
I
I
realize
thought you were-
that.
I thought you were talking about something else.
That's
My
okay.
bad.
No, I mean, hey, he had a phenomenal onside kick to keep
Okay,
him in the
now
game.
you normally hate kickers. You hate Rodrigo Blankenship, and I hate to use the word hate, but that is how you
I
feel
love
about
kickers.
him.
Yeah, what's up with you calling that out? True.
I love kickers. I do hate Rodrigo Blankenship because I will never forgive him for that Rose Bowl kick that was the beginning of the end for the Sooners
Well,
back
what
on
about Dicker the kicker
January
our
1st,
freshman
2018.
year, sophomore year beating us?
Look, the kid's a stud. I'll
He
give
is
him
a
credit for that.
stud. He is a stud.
He does not make mistakes. And that onside kick to put Texas back in the game against the Red Raiders on Saturday was
Impressive.
phenomenal. He is easily the best player on Texas's roster. If there is a player on Texas's roster right now that I would say has a potential to be a 10-year starter in the NFL, it's Cameron Dicker.
Oh, Parker. You know, I just don't know what goes through your brain
Okay,
sometimes.
so Gabe Burkage or Dicker the kicker?
See, that's
Gabe
tough.
Burkage. Gabe
That's tough.
Burkage.
Burkage has never
Flawless.
missed, so I feel like I have to go with Burkage right now, but those two are just about on the same level.
Okay, so with that being said, we've seen some of these teams kind of outplay Oklahoma. So now brings up the question, is 18 too far of a drop for the Sooners?
You're asking me if 18's too far of a drop.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. I think that they deserve it. Let me remind you that they could be unranked, and they're lucky that they are still ranked, because this was Kansas State that they lost to Kansas State. And let me tell you that everyone's only played 2 to 3 games. And that means that OU's record is 1-2. That means they're 50%. So they're lucky that they're ranked 18, to say that all. And I honestly hate to say it, but I feel like they're only ranked based off of reputation. Yes, we slaughtered Missouri State, but Missouri State is in the Missouri Valley Conference. The
Yeah.
Missouri Valley Conference. Didn't even know that existed. But you look at consistent teams also, like Alabama and Clemson, who play inferior teams like Kansas State, but they still produce the wins. They stay consistent
win.
and they always produce the wins. It's just for some reason each year OU just decides to surprise us and lose to an easy team like Kansas State, which is tough to see, and I hate to see it, but I really do have to say that I'm not surprised that they dropped that far in the poll at all. At all.
I think reputation is a good word, because I'm not
Huge.
surprised. This does not surprise me. OU gets ranked highly every year because of their reputation
Yeah.
and their reputation only. I tried to say that Missouri State was not a justified win. It's Missouri State.
It's
Come on,
not.
be more realistic about it.
When did one loss become such cause to knock a team that far down the
When it's
rankings?
to
Because
it's Kansas State.
nonetheless, Kansas State is not a bad football team. This is a team that went 8-5 last year. I'll tell you what, I can remember a time back in 2003, in
tape.
fact, when Oklahoma, ranked #1 in the country and undefeated, played Kansas State in the Big 12 championship game, lost 35-7. only dropped to number 2 and ended up playing in the national championship game. Look, one loss should not be a unilateral cause to tank a team down the rankings. I think Oklahoma, if anybody at home can look me in the eye and tell me that Oklahoma's not one of the 15 best teams in the country.
Look at me
least,
right
I
now.
was just about
Look
to
at
say
me
that.
right now.
You're kidding
and
yourself.
you need to look me in the eyes and take back everything you said last weekend about Kansas State and how terrible they were. You can't just sit up here now that they beat OU and say this miraculous change happened, and now there's some great team that can just come here and beat Oklahoma. That's not how it works. Oklahoma is not a good football team.
Okay, let's keep in mind though. Let's keep in mind though, we were under the impression going into last week that Kansas State was going to be down 20 plus players due to COVID-19 protocol. They were only down 7, so they were not nearly as shorthanded as we imagined. Also, like I said, this team went 8-5 this year, surprised a lot of people, was very much in the hunt for the Big 12 championship game, for a berth in the Big 12 championship game towards the end of the season. And Chris Kleiman's a phenomenal coach.
Agreed.
He's the only Big 12 coach.
No one said he
to beat
wasn't.
Lincoln
No
Riley
one said he
twice.
wasn't. Yes, but let me tell
Everyone's
you,
agreeing.
look me in the eyes here now. Reputation. Oklahoma compared to Kansas State. Just saying, they're lucky that they're ranked right now. Even if it's 18, yes, they're going to be able to climb back up, but I do not think that they should be in the top 15 at all. Not at all.
Why not? Just based on the loss?
No, not just based on the loss, but it's based on other things. They only played Missouri State, and then they played Kansas State. They slaughtered Missouri State. Yes, great win, shutout. Again, it's Missouri State. And then they play Kansas State, who is ranked way farther down than we were, and now we lose to them.
Do you
and
believe?
that just looks horrible on OU.
Do you
Awful.
believe that there are 17 teams in college football that are better than Oklahoma?
100%.
I do.
Right now, we're sitting at 50%. We are sitting at 50%.
I think there's 3 teams alone in the Big 12 that are better than Oklahoma.
You think Oklahoma State is a better team than Oklahoma?
I
Do you
think I
believe
can
that?
go with Texas Tech, and possibly, yes, Baylor
Texas Tech.
or Oklahoma State.
Texas Tech.
Yes.
You think Texas Tech is better than
Yes.
Oklahoma?
I wouldn't
Yes.
say that.
I'm
want
afraid
you
there's not a
guys to
whole lot
remember
else
me
I can
saying
say
this because their receivers are going to be a force to be reckoned with on our secondary.
I don't know what else I can say to that.
I also
The
don't have
argument-
any more words.
If the argument is that Texas Tech is a better football team than Oklahoma,
Well, your argument
that's a
last
hot
weekend
take,
was that
Caroline.
Kansas State wasn't better than Oklahoma, and they came down here and embarrassed us.
and you know what? Sometimes the better team loses. That's the reality of college football. That happens
But you
week to
need to
week.
start being more realistic with yourself, because Oklahoma is not, and I don't think will be, a good football team for the remainder of the season. And here's why. I'm just going to go ahead and throw this into some sound of Coach Grinch last week in the post-game press conference.
Yeah, I wish it was, at this moment of time to find a lot of positives would be really reaching. It's a 4-quarter football game, and we talked about it all week. The only quarter you can win a game is the fourth quarter. Don't make evaluations, and we can say whatever we said, and take some positivity out of the fact, well, I told them type of stuff, and that's not what good coaches do.
Okay, that's enough for me. It's been 3 weeks of regular season, 3 months of practice, and you can't find one positive with your team. That's an issue, and it's not going to change in the last 7 days. It's not going to change in the next 7 days. So I'm sorry, but 18 is perfect for me. Honestly, I don't even know now that they should be ranked, and they have no justification, and they have no sign of getting there. So that's it for me. There's nothing else I can say other than Oklahoma looks terrible.
All right. I agree with you on 18, but I couldn't say that about Oklahoma.
I'm sorry. I still love the university. But when we come back, we will be joined by our in-studio team, and they will take a look at the top 5 plays across the country from last weekend.
Welcome back to Gameday U, the one and only student-produced pregame show at the University of Oklahoma. I'm Audrey Goodson, and I'm here joined in the studio by Stone Weber and Ashley Vanderbilt. How are we feeling on this college football Saturday?
Excited, ready for
So
some football.
excited. The weather's
Let's go.
nice.
It's a great
gonna
college
be a
football
great
Saturday.
day. So, all right, before we jump into some of the biggest questions facing college football today, let's send it to Dylan Riviera with the top 5 plays.
Thanks, Audrey. This week is a special top 5 plays as we have a bonus 6th play, but more on that later. We start with NC State and the Virginia Tech Hokies. Tavion Robinson shoves off the defender and snags the ball for the touchdown. A well-thrown ball and a strong play from the wideout helped lead Tech to a 45-24 win. Now here we have 2 plays that look very similar. The first from the Carrier Dome, it's Syracuse and Georgia Tech. Running back Sean Tucker looks like he's about to go down, but check the cameras. Tucker gets the easy touchdown after he rolls over the defender and stays on his feet. A savvy veteran move from the freshman tailback. Next, we head to Pittsburgh for a top 25 matchup between Pitt and Louisville. Wide receiver Taysir Mack does something eerily similar. After he catches the ball, Abdullah thinks he's made the tackle, but Mack knows he never went down. He takes off to the end zone and referee gives the signal, it's a touchdown. And Louisville is left standing around in confusion. 2 teams Norman knows well, Texas and Texas Tech. Alan Bowman looks like he's overthrown his receiver, but TJ Vasher says, don't worry, I got it. He reaches out for the over-the-shoulder catch, and how about the awareness to get his right foot down? Texas gets the overtime win, but Texas Tech makes the top 5 plays. How about a highlight from FIU and Liberty? DJ Stubbs comes up with an early nominee for Catch of the Year. Back left corner of the end zone, and the ball's a little far out there, but he's got it! Touchdown Flames! The 5'9" receiver becomes Mr. Fantastic and stretches out for this amazing catch. Flames hold on to win a close one, 36-34. And for this week's number 1 play, we turn to the Ragin' Cajuns. 19th-ranked Louisiana at risk of an upset from Georgia Southern. But not if kicker Nate Snyder has anything to say about it. The 53-yarder sails through the uprights and let the celebration ensue. That's it from me, Ashley, Stone, and Audrey. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. Now, this season is young, but we've already seen some heroes arise. Which college football player rose to the occasion last week? Ashley, we're going to start with you.
Absolutely. So my hero from last week was De'Aaron King, the University of Houston transfer and now the quarterback at the University of Miami. So he is a super accurate and tight thrower, guys, and he also has the ability to move on his feet. Already this season, he has thrown for 736 yards with a 67% pass completion. And in high school, he broke Kyler Murray's Texas high school passing touchdown record. His biggest dual threat competition in the game in college football would probably have to be Justin Fields. King has said that he, quote, just wants to win at Miami. He's now at a Power 5 program. He has the chance to do so. He's going to thrive under this Rhett Lashley offense that he has been at both SMU and Auburn, and he is a very offensively minded coach, which is great for King. So I have King as my best team, or as my best player. What about you guys?
I think that is a great pick so far. I think he's off to a great start. My best player, though, is going to have to be KJ Costello, the transfer quarterback from Stanford. Already switching up from Stanford to the SEC, allegedly seeing some big defenses here, but lighting him up like LSU did against OU last year. I mean, he was 36 of 60, 623 yards and 5 touchdowns. I mean, that is unheard of against an SEC defense. As you can see here, he throws to Gardner over the middle. Gardner had over 120 yards along with 2 other receivers, and he threw the ball to 10 different guys. As you can see here, he's really just stepping up. He's showing off his confidence. He really just looks like he's been in this offense for years, and I feel like that's what's great with these Mike Leach offenses. You really just plug and go, throw any guy in there, and he'll throw for over 500 yards. So he's my player of the week.
Stone, I think Costello had a great performance last week, but Mississippi State could have won much more convincingly had he not thrown 2 interceptions and lost 2 fumbles. But my hero for the week is Kyle Fields. Kyle Trask. Move over Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields because another quarterback has just entered the Heisman race, and that is Florida quarterback Kyle Trask. Trask had an outstanding performance last week against Ole Miss, putting up 51 points, finishing 30 of 42 for 416 yards, and throwing for 6 touchdowns. Those 60 TDs tie an SEC record for the most ever in a season opener. And that was just set a year ago by, you guessed it, Joe Burrow. Looks like Trask is in some pretty good company. And he's a big guy at 6'5", 240 pounds. He's extremely accurate throwing the ball, and he has a strong pocket presence. But, it also helps when you have the best tight end in the country, which is Kyle Pitts. And Pitts caught 4 of 6 of Trask's touchdowns that were thrown to him. Now, the SEC defenses are going to have a really tough time stopping this duo.
So do you think that Trask is playing so far better than D'Eriq King? You think those, the 3 guys you mentioned, are the 3 quarterbacks in the Heisman race right now?
I think that Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields are definitely the 2 to live up to. But I think that Trask and D'Eriq King, they're all right there.
Okay.
So along those same lines, we've seen some players really fail to show up for their squad. Who is your 0 for this week? Ashley?
My 0 for this week is none other than Kellen Mond, who had a really disappointing performance last week against Vanderbilt. Now, Texas A&M was 30-point favorites in Nashville. They did not live up to that in any way, shape, or form. They only won 17-12 and were never able to pull away. Kellen Mond has never brought Texas A&M to the highest amount of excellence that A&M fans thought he was going to, and even everyone in college football. His throwing accuracy isn't the best, and he fumbled the ball twice in this Vanderbilt game. You can't have that happen from an experienced quarterback. And there were even rumors about removing Mond after this game. Head coach Jimbo Fisher was asked at his press conference if they would put in a different quarterback, and he didn't say no, but he said he was proud of how Mond handled the situation.
I agree with that pick. Mond, they've been talking about it for years. He came out before last season saying he was the best quarterback in the SEC. I think that's proven now. He's not anywhere near that. My 0 for this week, a little bit closer to home, is the Oklahoma offensive line. As we saw, much of last week's game, we started off, we came out strong. And as you see here, look, the pick over the middle, Rattler has very little time to throw the ball. And as you can see on this touchdown to Mims coming up, the only reason there's not a sack is because the 2 K-State guys run into each other. Wyatt Hubert, projected All-American, first team Big 12 defensive lineman, had an absolute field day against the OU offensive line. It didn't matter who he was going up against, he was going to get past him. And then throughout much of the 3rd and 4th quarter, the OU offense couldn't get anything going, much because Rattler and the run game couldn't get going. They had no blocks, the drives were getting stalled, having 3 and outs, untypical OU offense, but it just led to that loss.
So Stone, I'm going south of the Red River, and my 0 for this week is the Texas defensive backs. The Texas defense looked all around absolutely atrocious last weekend, but the one position that really stuck out to me was their defensive backs. In their game against Tech, their tackling was their biggest issue, and even Tom Herman said it. The Longhorn defense allowed 56 points and gave up 441 total yards. Tech also converted 8 of 16 third downs and allowed 11 explosive plays, with runs of at least 10 yards or passes of at least 15. This week, Texas Tech squeaked by the same Texas Tech team squeaked by an 0-2 FCS Houston Baptist team the week before, and Texas needed to come back by 15 points and go into overtime to redeem themselves. Now today, they're going to take on TCU at home. The Horned Frogs lost their game against Iowa State last weekend, 37-34, but TCU has won 5 of their last 6 matchups against the Longhorns. With how bad the defense looked this last Saturday, Texas might have to rely on Sam Ehlinger in the offense to pull it out. Now, the Big 12 has been off to a slow start. Now, what are we thinking for all of the rest of the conferences? Ashley?
Okay, well, my top pick is easily the SEC, and I think it might be kind of obvious why. The SEC has 8 teams in the top 25, and 4 of those teams alone are in the top 10. Right after that, I have the Big 10. I think that they have the most competition next to the SEC, and Ohio State really helps to bring the Big 10 up as a conference. And I think that there's always competition. There's going to be an upset, even among non-ranked teams. There's Iowa, there's Wisconsin, there's Penn State, lots of teams in the Big 10. What do you guys think? Those are my top 2.
All right, Stone, let's hear it.
I agree with you. Top two, definitely SEC and Big Ten. Consistently dominant programs in each. Alabama, Ohio State. Teams looking on the rise as well. I think third, though, might get a bit of a disagreement here, is the ACC. I think they're definitely on the rise this year. And I mean, finally, someone else other than Clemson. Clemson's not going to have to play the playoff committee isn't going to have to rank a Virginia team that they can slap around. I mean, they finally have a Notre Dame team. They may or may not join the conference. They have a UNC, which is looking somewhat promising. And Miami finally might be back to glory. I think the next one, the fourth one, has to be the Big 12. The Big 12 is the most inconsistent conference by far. I mean, you could say sometimes they're the second best conference. Sometimes I know people say they're the worst Power 5 conference. OU can't go out and lose to K-State, who lost to an Arkansas State team favored by 28.
But anyway, so I'm going to have a little bit different of a pick. So, of course, I have the SEC on top. Who doesn't? I mean, we all know. But I have the ACC in second place, actually. So this year, they not only have Clemson, but they also have a Miami who has really proven themselves thus far in this season. And they also have a UNC team that's looking pretty good. And the addition of Notre Dame, we've kind of forgotten about Notre Dame here in the last couple weeks because they haven't played. They had a little COVID outbreak, and now they're back, and they're ready to go.
What makes the Big Ten, what makes the ACC better than the Big Ten at this
I
point?
think that they just have more competition. So my argument with the Big Ten is that they have Ohio State. Of course, Ohio State's going to be great this year. I honestly think that if Ohio State played anyone in the ACC, that they would probably win that matchup. However, the rest of the conference is just kind of okay.
So you're not feeling high on Penn State. Michigan's not going to be back once again.
Yeah.
Nothing?
No, nope.
I completely disagree with you. I think that the ACC doesn't have, in their unranked teams, Florida State is absolutely not good at all.
Garbage.
And you're not going to see a good matchup between Syracuse and Boston College, for example. And I think that you're going to see a much better game between even a Nebraska and a Maryland, for example, even though Maryland and Rutgers, for example, are probably two of the worst teams in the Big Ten, but I still think you're going to see a better matchup between those teams than if you did in the ACC.
Right, I definitely agree with you saying that the Big Ten's lower teams are better than the ACC's lower teams.
I agree.
I mean, FSU, they're supposed to be back, Mike Norvell and everything. They just can't get it going. So
I'm going to respectfully agree to disagree, but then I have the Big 12, and we're not looking too hot, but I still think we're better than the Pac-12. All the Pac-12 really has is Oregon.
Of course.
But I think that what OU and Texas do in these next couple weeks is really going to save the conference. So if OU can pull through and win out the rest of their season, they're going to look good. I mean, I don't know if they're going to really be a great playoff contender, but they could be there, And I mean, if Texas wins out, does what they need to do, I mean, hopefully Oklahoma will pull off the victory next weekend. But if Texas and OU keep it up, they keep their performance, keep the performance level to where it needs to be, no more foolish mistakes, I think that they'll be just okay.
I have the Big 12 ranked after the Big 10, actually, because I think that there is more competition in the Big 12, again, among those non-ranked teams than there is in the ACC. I don't think Notre Dame's ever going to join a conference. I think this is a COVID-19 situation.
Oh, you have the Big 12 ahead of the ACC?
I do, yes.
Wow, okay.
I think that even, again, against the competition, I think that K-State and Texas Tech, you're going to see a better matchup this weekend than, again, like a Syracuse and a Boston College. I think that for that reason, the Big 12 is better than the ACC, and Pac-12 is last.
I think when you start looking at the conference, you got to look at the top 4 teams. And I think, you have OU, Texas, OSU, and then who? Tech, K-State. I mean, pick it. But at least you have Notre Dame, you have Clemson, you have UNC, and you have Miami. You have 4 good top 25 ranked teams. In the Big 12 at least, you have the top 20 teams, and past that, feels like everyone's just a hit or miss.
All right, so we're going to take a timeout, but when we return to Game Day U, we're going to play a little game of Pretender or Contender. Stick around. Welcome back to Game Day U. It is time for 3 and Out, where we answer 3 pressing questions from the college football world. But we're going to make a little game out of it. I'll say a school, and I want to know if you think that they're a pretender or a contender. Ashley, what do you think about Miami?
I think that Miami is 100% a contender for the college football playoff this season, you guys.
I agree.
I think with De'Aaron King and they have a tight end, Brevin Jordan, together they are absolutely electric. So Brevin Jordan already has 15 receptions and 3 touchdowns already in this season, which is insane. I think Miami also has a really stout defense, you guys. They have great running backs, good wide receivers, and I think that their defense is good enough to compete against other teams, and I think that for sure this is why Miami is such a good team and is playoff worthy.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you there. I think Miami is a group of pretenders. Other than the offense so far, I mean, De'Aaron King and Cameron Harris are playing well, but who are they playing against? I mean, really, UAB, a average showing at best, beat them by what, 7 points? And then you play FSU, you beat them 51-10. They're terrible. They're one of the worst teams in the ACC.
Oh.
I think when they play Clemson in 2 weeks, they're gonna get destroyed.
I think they're going to be competitive, and I think in their UAB game was a starting point for them, and I think that De'Aaron King has improved a lot since then.
Right.
I think although they might not pull off a victory next weekend, if they just keep it close, they can always play again in the ACC title game and pull off the victory then.
True.
They've just got to keep it tight.
I don't know. I mean, looking at that footage from 2 years ago, 2017 ACC championship, everyone was high on Miami. Everyone's saying, "Oh my gosh, if Miami can get there undefeated and they lose, they'll still be in the playoff and everything." I just don't think they're not legit.
I think it's a great combo because they had a different coach and they had Mark Richt. Now they have Rhett Lashley, who, like I said, has great offense, you guys. And I think that they have their head coach, who was their defensive coordinator. So those two combinations, a great defense, in my opinion, is what is going to win you a national championship. So you have the defense and you have the offense. I don't think Miami can go wrong.
This Miami team's different this year, I will say that. Houston transfer De'Aaron King has looked absolutely outstanding thus far. And the Hurricanes are off to a great 3-0 start. And now we have a week to rest and have a huge game against Clemson. The offense is just absolutely rolling, and that connection that De'Aaron King and the tight end Brevin Jordan have is absolutely off the charts. Jordan leads Miami in receptions with 212 receiving yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. King is averaging 245 in passing yards per game and has completed 67% of his passes. Between King and the addition of Rhett Lashley, the Hurricanes' offense looks completely different this year and absolutely elite. Now, I think that if Miami can beat Clemson or even keep the game close, it's going to be a massive victory for them and the ACC. It's going to make the entire conference look better. I don't know if they're going to pull it off this week, or this next week, but if they keep it close, I think that they will definitely be a contender for the ACC title game, and then they're going to get a rematch later in the year.
So you think that they'll be the second best team in the ACC,
other
than Notre Dame or North Carolina?
I think so.
I think Notre Dame is always overrated, so.
Fair enough.
All right, so now what do you guys think about Florida? Are they a contender or are they a pretender?
Okay, I know this is going to be a hot take, but I think that Florida is a pretender this season. If you watch their last game, their defense missed a lot of tackles against Ole Miss. And this is an Ole Miss team that their head coach, it's his first year, and they really ran the score up on Florida. If you're going to contend in a playoff, I don't think you can let a team score as many points as Ole Miss did. And you never win big with a bad defense. And Kyle Trask is very inexperienced. Before last year, I think the first game he started was in middle school for football. He's a very inexperienced quarterback. I think he can be clutch, but I think that overall you're going to need a better team to be playoff worthy. And they don't really have any wide receivers either, other than their tight end, Kyle Pitts. But like I said, they're a good team, but I don't think they're going to make it to the playoff.
I think it's definitely an interesting take you have there, saying their defense might not be what it has been, but it's still very, very good. Top 10, top 15 at that. With the way I think about Florida is definitely they are contenders. Kyle Trask is one of the best, if not the best quarterback in the SEC. He had over 400 passing yards and 6 touchdowns. I mean, if you think about Alabama in 2018, before they get steamrolled by Clemson, their offense was unstoppable, and LSU in 2019. You can't stop them. An above average defense. That's really all you need. If your offense can score like this in the SEC, the other offenses, they can't keep up. With an offense like Georgia's, run the ball, throw it on 3rd and 7, no one's going to be able to keep up with them.
So I think Florida is definitely a contender this year. I mean, look at Kyle Pitts and Kyle Trask. Are you kidding me? But going into the year, Georgia looked like they were going to be the front runner for the SEC East. But now, Georgia did. I'm thinking it's definitely Florida. The third-ranked Gators offense looked absolutely incredible in their 51-35 win at Ole Miss last week. They racked up 645 yards of total offense, which is a school record against an SEC opponent. Ole Miss had no answers for Kyle Trask, and he put up 416 passing yards, and he threw for not 1, not 2, but 6 touchdowns. Meanwhile, in Georgia, the Bulldogs needed a quarterback change to beat Arkansas, who had a 7-5 lead at the half. Now, I will say the Gators defense needs some improvement if they want to be legit. Florida allowed 613 yards, had receivers open all game long, and the Rebels took advantage of gaping holes in the middle of the field. They've got to correct this before they play South Carolina. And finally, this one may be tough to answer objectively. Is OU a contender or are they a pretender?
Okay, well, I know this isn't going to be what everyone wants to hear, but I think that OU is going to be a pretender this year. Spencer Rattler, we're not used to having a quarterback like him. We're used to having very experienced quarterbacks. This is his first year playing ball at the college level. And our O-line has been slowly declining over the years, and it doesn't look any better this year other than our very good center. But around him, there's a lot of inexperience, and there aren't very many people that are really good, in my opinion. And we have a low depth chart in the running back position right now as well. And Charleston Rambo is really our only super experienced receiver. So I think right now OU is having a transition year, and I think that this almost might be good for OU because then I think we can really build on what we need to work on. So what do you guys think?
I'm with you, Ashley.
So you don't think we have any really good players at all?
I think we have great players, some of them, but I don't think that we have as a team enough to make it to the playoffs.
So you don't think is it the offense? Is it the defense? What is it for you?
I think it's both. I think Spencer Rattler doesn't have enough experience as a college level quarterback. I mean, he threw multiple interceptions last game, and I think that our defense needs work too. We looked good against Missouri State. We looked good in the first half against Kansas State, but we need to do better. We can't just fall flat in the second half.
Right. No, I definitely agree with you in that. But I also disagree with you in the fact that we have plenty of weapons around him. There's no excuses for him to be making these bad plays. The first interception's deflected, that's okay. The second one underthrow to Mims, and the third one throwing it over a 6'2" to a 5'9" Drake Stoops. It's inexcusable. The defense played very well. They gave up over half the yards on 2 plays, and because of this, I think OU, they're contenders like they usually are. They're going to bounce back from their loss like they always do. Probably go undefeated, get to the playoff. We'll see where they go from there. Hopefully everything changes out, but I mean, everything usually changes after the OU loss. I don't know what it is. They'll go put up 500-600 yards. Rattler will get himself back in the Heisman conversation. The defense will play better, a little bit better. They'll play really good in the first half, like they did last year against Iowa State, probably give them some points in the second half. You just really have to get the run game going. You can't put all the pressure on Rattler. He was 24 of 26. His 2 incompletions were interceptions. Up until that point, I disagree with the fact that his accuracy. I think his accuracy is amazing.
I think he has really good accuracy other than those interceptions.
Other than his interception, I mean, of course. But no, I think OU is definitely a contender in the playoff.
Stone, I really hope you're right, but I think we're a pretender. I mean, look at us. Did you see what happened to us last weekend? OU lost to a K-State team last Saturday that lost to Arkansas State. This is OU's 6th loss as a 20-point favorite since the start of the 2009 season. And there's no other team that has lost more than 3 in that entire span. This loss was particularly bad considering that we were undermanned, that K-State was undermanned with 7 starters out. There's obviously lots of work that the Sooners need to do in order to make themselves a legitimate contender. Spencer Rattler's experience is really starting to show, and the offensive line and run game really needs some work. And again, the defense looked rough. For the committee to even come close to considering OU, Rattler has got to be better. And the defense gave up 31 points in the second half, which just can't happen. The running game has to develop as the Sooners only averaged 3.7 yards per carry last weekend, and they must beat everyone convincingly, including Texas. It's time to prove themselves.
I think what ended up happening is, though, OU, if you look in the past couple years, we've had Kennedy Brooks, an established running back, Trey Sermon, a bunch of great guys. Coming in this year, it's really uncertain. I think Seth McGowan is the guy for sure, but if you notice, OU starts
He's just young.
Yeah, he's very young, and the fumble definitely turned them off from that. But I mean, starting the drives off, they're usually passing the ball. Usually they try to run it first, establish the ground game. But now it's just feels very one-dimensional at least.
And I think what we've also seen in past playoffs is that OU makes it there and then we lose big.
We're embarrassed. The committee is not going to want to consider us this year.
I think we rely too much on offense.
Yeah, we do. We definitely do. Our defense has just not shown up, and this has become a trend. But as we get inch closer to kickoff time and we zoom out and we look at the big picture on how much patience the Sooners can have with some of the biggest names in the program. Coming up next.
Welcome back to Game Day U. Kickoff is getting closer. I'm Caroline Grace, she's Shannon Earhart, and he is Parker Thune. Let's not waste any time and jump right into it. Shannon, you kind of touched on this earlier, but patience with Spencer Rattler. Yes? No? What are your thoughts?
Yes, I would 100% give him a ton of patience. I think that we really need to remember that Spencer is still learning. It's only his second college start and his first conference game start. He's still young, he's still immature, hate to say it, but it's true, and he dominated the first 3 quarters and then unfortunately tanked it. But hey, he still played great in the first 3 quarters. I know I talked about earlier how he kind of let the game slip through and that's what went wrong, but I think we do need to have patience on him and remember that it's not all on him, it's on the coaching staff as well. Parker, you talked about it earlier. You talked about how Riley should be working better with him. And I want to remind you that Riley, before Spencer Rattler, remember we had Baker, we had Kyler, we had Jalen coming in as older quarterbacks, starting hot and just being, there's just a different breed. Rattler's a different breed than those 3. And I think because he's a younger player, it has to be a different coaching style. And Lincoln needs to come up with ways to cope with him because Spencer's not the same. So I really do think that Riley should take responsibility. I know you're smiling at me here.
He's so anxious.
Riley should take responsibility for the way that Rattler's been playing. And yeah, I do think that we should be patient with him, but I do stand by my decision back earlier when I said that that's what went wrong because I do still believe that Rattler should be a leader and he shouldn't have played that the way that he did, even though it just, how could you play like that in the 4th quarter? You play so well the entire game and then just absolutely tank it. I just don't understand how that happened, and I do put some of the blame on Riley, but Parker, just say what you want to say.
Well.
Killing me over here, staring at me.
Singing a bit of a different tune than you were about an hour ago, huh?
Hey, I backed myself up.
Listen,
I do stand by my decision.
Very lukewarm right now.
Listen, I don't feel any need to debate you because I feel like you just basically deconstructed the entire argument that you made earlier.
That is not true. That's
all
not
of that
true.
notwithstanding.
Got you.
But yeah, but let me compare one game to the whole season. I'm talking about Spencer. Having patience with Spencer for the whole season, not just a single game. I was very impatient with him that game. I didn't want him to keep playing. 3 interceptions, reminding you.
Chandler Morris. Bring in Chandler Morris.
Chandler Morris, Tanner Mordecai, he needed to get yanked. So what
well,
do you say?
Listen, this goes back to what we were talking about at the top of the show, Shannon, what I was saying specifically. I have a lot of patience with Spencer Rattler at this point because I do think we're going to see market improvement, and I do think that he showed flashes of eliteness in that game against Kansas State. Like I mentioned, none of his first 25 passes hit the ground. He was 23 for 25 with the 2 interceptions, only one of which was his fault. So,
but what happened in the 4th quarter?
He has been tremendously efficient, not just through the air, but on the ground. And this is one area where I would like to see Lincoln Riley exploit Spencer Rattler's talents a bit more, is in the running game, because he does have one heck of an arm, but he's also very mobile. And you think about what Jalen Hurts did last year in the Oklahoma offense, rushing for nearly 1,300 yards. in that zone read option attack. That's something that Oklahoma can use more to their advantage with a guy that has a skill set like Spencer Rattler does. His mobility is very understated. And the reality is, in Oklahoma's offense, you've got to have a quarterback who's mobile in order to succeed. It just opens up Lincoln Riley's playbook so much more. And you had that with Baker Mayfield. You had it to an even larger degree in Kyler Murray, and to a different degree in Jalen Hurts. Hurts was very much a different sort of a runner than Kyler Murray was. But I don't believe that through 2 games we have seen Spencer Rattler's full potential as a runner, and I think in the aftermath of that loss to Kansas State, we're going to see Lincoln Riley start to unlock a little bit more of Spencer Rattler's ability in the running game and try to get him out in space on the ground more often. And he can scramble. We saw that. We saw his ability to create when the play breaks down, but I would love to see more designed runs for Spencer Rattler. And the one thing I will say as well, he loves Seth McGowan. Rattler does.
Yeah.
Rattler has a phenomenal relationship with Seth McGowan and loves the skill set that he brings to the table in the backfield. So I'm really eager to see those two in action against Iowa State, hopefully running that read option a lot more than they've been able to the first couple weeks.
Yeah, so let me rewind you a little bit. And I said that the first.
She said she's going to rewind you.
The first time that we had this show, I said that I wanted to see Spencer Rattler act more like Jalen, even though he's more like Baker. I think that is Riley's job now to create that hybrid of Baker, Rattler, Hurts, little combination. I think that as the season progresses, we're going to start to see that more and more.
Well, since I've been rewound, does that mean we have to fight about Texas again?
No, but we will next week, so
challenge accepted.
You're not getting off the loose. But I like both of those viewpoints, especially what you were saying was, I don't necessarily think that it's on Rattler. I think it's on the play calls. We haven't been able to see his full potential. So I'm not upset. I think he played like someone who hasn't started in 3 years. And let's be real, we're always spoiled at quarterbacks. And as an OU fan, we tend to jump the gun at the beginning of the season and make all of these assumptions about quarterbacks. We saw it last year with Jalen Hurts. No one liked Jalen Hurts in the beginning. Let's just call it like it is. No one liked Kyler, and then we got Baker. What do you want to say about Jalen Hurts?
You said nobody liked Jalen Hurts? Because I recall him putting up 500 all-purpose yards and 6 touchdowns in the opener.
Well, so do I. But did you sit in those press conferences with everyone else talking about how he would never exceed Baker or Kyler's expectations?
You know, I think the Alabama chauvinist in you is showing out a little bit here.
Parker, listen. I'm sorry that I'm more knowledgeable about Jalen Hurts. I watched him for 5 years before he came here. So...
For 5 years?
4 years, 3 years,
watching
whatever.
his high school games in Houston?
Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. You don't need to know what I did when I was in high school.
Yeah, that's probably for the best.
Yeah, I don't think anybody wants to know what you did in high
best.
school, Caroline.
No, just to touch up on what you said, I think he's a powerful runner and he's got a hell of an arm, and we haven't been able to see that yet, and that's all on Lincoln Riley. He fulfilled every expectation of being a first-year starter, and that's just about all that everywhere we can go with that.
Patience.
He needs patience, and he deserves patience, especially I like that you called out Seth McGowan because he's going to take TJ Pledger's spot. And
hands down 100%.
Yes.
I think Seth McGowan is going to be starting over TJ
we will
Pledger.
get into that later. Before we get into that, let's talk about patience with Coach Grinch. He's been here for 2 years now. All we've heard about is Speed D, but have we seen it yet? Take it away.
I would say medium to slow D. Not Speed D yet. I think he's getting there because where are the turnovers? You guys, where are the turnovers? It's unreal that in the 16 games that Grinch has been here, there's only been 12 forced turnovers. That's not okay. That's not okay at all, especially those tackles for losses that can turn into fumbles and turn into sacks. It's just finding a different mentality and being sure that his players know that they can't have the mentality that stopping the offense at 4 downs is just enough, because it's not. We need those fumbles and we need those sacks. And it was seriously prevalent in the game last week because the offense had 4 turnovers. They had 4 turnovers and the defense didn't back that up. They had nothing to stop it. So I think that Grinch really just needs to pull his team together because turnovers come from physical and aggressive plays. So I think that mentality switch is what's really going to help his players. So I will be patient with Grinch when he starts to get the turnovers. I want to see the turnovers, and hopefully we can force them from ISU, but I just hope something switches, and I hope a flip switches on, because we just need to recover the ball. We need to get those fumbles and sacks, and those TFLs are absolutely crucial.
Well, and I want to piggyback off of that, Shannon.
Let's stay on turnovers a little bit.
I think that is the fundamental flaw in Alex Grinch's defensive philosophy. I don't think you can predicate a defensive philosophy on turnovers, because turnovers by nature are random. You can't account for them, you can't plan them, they just kind of happen. And so I think the fact that Alex Grinch is so reliant in his defensive mentality on the creation of turnovers has caused the Sooners on a certain level to neglect the fundamentals, and that's manifesting itself in poor coverage, in poor tackling. And I think you got to go back to the drawing board and start with the little things, because the Sooners have one takeaway, as you mentioned, through 2 games.
Yeah.
The Sooners did not meet Grinch's expectations last year in terms of creating turnovers. And again, I think that's so random. Creating turnovers is so random that you can't expect to walk in.
You can't harp on it and focus on that.
You can't expect to walk in on a Saturday and force 2 to 3 turnovers. You just can't. You might, and it's obviously very fortunate if you do, and that's a welcome change from what we've seen thus far from Oklahoma's defense under the Grinch regime. But where Oklahoma has to really nail down their fundamentals on defense is with tackling, with pass coverage, especially with zone coverage, which is where the Sooners really struggled on Saturday against Kansas State. But they've got to take care of the little things. They've got to be meticulous about the fundamentals of defensive football before they start worrying about ball hawking, interceptions, and forcing fumbles. Because right now, where the Sooners lost that game against Kansas State on Saturday was allowing big plays, allowing chunk gains. And you can chalk that up, and I feel like I've said it a million times, you can chalk that up to poor tackling and poor coverage, especially among the linebacker corps.
It starts with the basics. It starts with the basics, and you build up from there. It doesn't start with, as you just said, turnovers. It needs to be, like, they need to have different takeaways.
I will say one other thing, though. I think we do need to be pretty patient with Alex Grinch and this Sooner defense, because I think it will come along. And I think there's a lot more good than bad. And I know that's that might sound strange after the performance on Saturday. But for the first 3 quarters of that game, the Sooners were absolutely dominant on defense. They got burned by a bunch of chunk gains. And Grinch himself said, hey, when you're hitting singles and giving up home runs, you got to hit a lot of singles in order to stay in a game. Now, my counter to that, Alex Grinch, would be, well, just don't give up the home runs. But one way or another, I think you got to stay on that singles mentality for where you're at as a defense right now at the University of Oklahoma, because you're very much still in the shadow of the Mike Stoops era. That's not too far in the rearview mirror.
Almost 2 years ago, Mike Stoops was given the boot. So
Delarian Turner-Yell, Brian
Oh,
Asamoah, those guys have been phenomenal on defense. They've been sure tacklers. They've manned their assignments properly. There have been some guys, namely those 2, at the front and center for the Sooners on the defensive side of the football that have been really, really good through these first 2 games.
They did lack.
But overall, the Sooners just seem to lack, they seem to lack an all-11 contribution on a play-to-play basis.
It's the chemistry and the gel together.
There always seems to be one guy that's out of position or out of place, and that's what costs the Sooners.
So it is safe to say that the Speed D has yet to make an appearance, but when we come back, Audrey, Stone, and Ashley are going to give their picks for the week and the most overrated and underrated players in the country, so stick around.
Welcome back to Game Day U. One of the things we're wanting to do here at the show this year is highlight high school football. And with that said, let's shine the spotlight on some of Oklahoma's younger stars. So last night, Bixby and Carl Albert faced off in Midwest City. The 6A2 powerhouse topped the Titans 56-14, but the big storyline was the play of Braylon Presley. Presley had 25 carries for, get this, 302 yards and 6 touchdowns from Del City and Stillwater. A couple of wide receivers showed their versatility last night. Donovan Stevens of Del City finished the night with 3 catches, 90 yards, and a touchdown. So for the Pioneers, Stephen Brown had 3 TD receptions and a go-along with 71 yards. So there's some players around the country who are touted as some of the best. but maybe they aren't. Ashley, who's one of the most overrated players in college football right now?
Now, this is very controversial, but I think that Sam Ehlinger is overrated, especially considering the Heisman talk around him this season. I think that Ehlinger can be really clutch, but I just don't think he's consistent. He hasn't lived up to what Texas fans, I think, deserve out of a quarterback and what they've been hoping for. I think that the LSU game was super indicative of his performance as a player. Granted, this was one of the greatest LSU teams ever, and obviously they won a national championship last year. But I think that the problems that you see in that game are some of his biggest issues. He isn't able to throw accurately. He throws too long. He's not really great on his feet. And UT fans really thought that they had a really great shot at that game. So
I think Ehlinger is one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. But I mean, I hate to say that because horns down.
You said
but I think that he's got what it takes to be a pretty good quarterback this year, especially in the Big 12. There's just not much.
Yeah, I think he's a good quarterback. I just don't think
not
that
great,
he's
though.
a Heisman winner.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
You said he's not great on his feet, so I definitely think he's a better runner than he's a passer.
I think he's a better passer than he is a runner.
I mean, he basically runs over anyone. I mean, we're OU fans, so we know he can just plow. He can just run over our guys anytime. But I'm gonna say my overrated player is Chuba Hubbard. It's gonna have to be because through 2 games last year, he had 265 rushing yards. And through 2 games this year, he only has 191. He's already dropped 25% of his production. And on one of the first drives last year, one of the first drives against Tulsa in week 1, Spencer Sanders fumbles the snap, hands it to Chuba cleanly, and he just drops the ball. I don't know. I don't even feel like he's the best running back on that team right now. L.D. Brown is outplaying him, averaging less than 4 yards a carry in week 1 and breaking his 11-game streak of 100 rushing yards.
Stone, I agree with you, but I think that, I mean, he was up for Heisman last. Like, he was very much so in the Heisman race last year. And so I don't think it's time to count him out yet. I agree that their backup has been playing better than he has. But, I mean, there's still so much left of this season. There's so much left to see out of Chuba Hubbard.
Right,
I agree.
There is a lot left, but I'm saying if he can't get over 100 rushing yards against Tulsa, I know OU's run defense and other Big 12 defenses are not great, but if you can get over 100 yards against Tulsa, I mean, I don't know. I think that's kind of alarming.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm going to leave the Big 12, and I'm going to LSU and the SEC with my overrated player, Miles Brennan. So after losing a majority of their starters to the NFL draft, including Heisman winner Joe Burrow, all eyes have been on LSU quarterback Miles Brennan this offseason. And he finally got his debut last Saturday, but it didn't go quite as he had expected. Now, expectations for this 2020 season have been high, and there has been a lot of confidence surrounding him. Out of high school, Brennan was a very highly recruited player and was expected to be the starter in 2018 before Joe Burrow transferred from Ohio State. However, Brennan's shoes are just a little bit too big for him to fill from last year. His performance against Mississippi State was below average to say the least, and he looked extremely rattled. He threw 2 picks and only had a completion percentage of 58% last weekend. To be fair, this isn't the same LSU team that we saw last year. I mean, they lost 5 starters on defense and 3 starters on offense, but this team is just completely different. So
I do agree that it's a completely different team, and I think that LSU should have a better quarterback than Miles Brennan. And I mean, they're LSU for goodness sakes. So I think that LSU can do a whole lot better. So
I don't think you can put everything on Miles Brennan so far. I mean, he's a 4-star recruit having to replace almost everyone around him. And trying to say you can fill his shoes, I mean, Joe Burrow had arguably one of the best, if not the best, single season ever by a quarterback. So I wouldn't say let's bench him or anything. Let's not toss him already. I mean, I think he played fairly well, 34 points. It's pretty good. Just couldn't get it done against KJ Costello and that Bulldogs offense.
on the flip side, there are some players who aren't getting enough hype. Who's your pick for the most underrated player?
All right, well, my pick for the most underrated is Sam Howell, the quarterback at North Carolina. He's only a sophomore. He had a stellar freshman year, and I think he's only going to continue to rise. Some of his highlights include that he's able to see the field really well. He's agile. He can move around. And as Tyler DeLuca pointed out week 1, he and Baker Mayfield have really similar statistics, and I think that that shows a really well-rounded quarterback. Obviously, Baker won a Heisman. He's doing well in the pros. I think that Sam Howell is going to be one of those pro-level quarterbacks, and I don't know if he's going to have like a huge amount of success at Carolina just because I'm not for sure about the guys around him, but I think that Sam Howell is definitely an underrated quarterback in the game right now.
I definitely feel like Sam Howell out of everyone, really, he's getting a lot of hype, more than Miles Brennan, more than anything. I feel like everybody's been talking about him. But I definitely think he's good. I wouldn't say he's underrated, but I definitely say he's good. I'm going to go with another quarterback in the ACC. I'm going to go with Kenny Pickett out of Pittsburgh. 6'2" quarterback. He's an absolute diamond in the rough. The whole deal with this Pittsburgh offense is they're trying to get back on track. They scored 50 points week 1 against Austin Peay for the first time since 2018. In the Big 12, that is absolutely unheard of. That catch right there was to Shockey Jack Louis. Best name you hear all day, I guarantee it. Last week against Louisville, he was 23 of 38 for 220 yards and 2 touchdowns. His completion percentage already through 3 games is 66%, which is up 5% from last year. And he's up 7.6 yards per throw, up 6.6 from last year. The whole point of this offense is really just improving and going one step forward and moving up in the right direction.
So for my pick, I'm going with the best quarterback that you've probably never even heard of, and that's Trey Lance at North Dakota State. So Trey Lance, he follows in the footsteps of Carson Wentz and Easton Stick as the quarterback at North Dakota State, and he is a genuine dual threat quarterback. Now he's projected to go within the first 10 picks in the 2021 draft, but he has not declared yet, but if he does, that's where he's projected to go. Lance finished the 2019 season nearly perfect with a 16-0 record. He won an FCS national championship, threw for 2,786 yards this past year, 28 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. And remember how I said he was a dual threat quarterback? He also ran for 1,100 yards, 14 touchdowns, and he averaged 6.5 yards per carry. Unlike most college football players that are getting 7 to 10 games to play this season, Lance and the Bison get 1, which is today against Central Arkansas. If he goes this game without throwing an interception, he could go his entire college career without throwing a pick. How incredible is that? I think he's up there with Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields.
Wait, what?
He's incredible.
What?
He is absolutely insane. Off the charts.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
Have you watched him play before?
I've seen him play in person.
He is incredible.
Yeah. So my dad and I we live right in Frisco, we go to the FCS championship every year. He's good. He's not that good. I mean, come on, give me a break. He's playing FCS opponents. It is a division below for a reason. I mean, North Dakota State is a powerhouse in general. But when they're playing James Madison, I mean, come on. I understand what you're saying. He's not Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence good. No, not by any stretch. And if you watch the game, he has some mistakes. Usually they go there, they beat them by 14, 21 points. They won by maybe 7.
Hey, we'll see later today.
I mean, yeah. And
I think he has talent, but I don't think he's Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence level. I agree.
We'll see in the draft coming up. We'll see this next year if he decides to go. I mean, look, he follows in the footsteps of Carson Wentz and Easton Stick. Come on,
I think he just needs more time. And also, I mean, the only reason they're playing this game today is so they can show him off. There's no reason for North Dakota State to play. Everyone knows how good they are and how much they're just going to beat every other FCS opponent. The only reason is so NDSU can broadcast Trey Lance out there and get a top 10 pick out there and bring publicity to their school.
They are going to get a top 10 pick out of there. I'm telling you right now.
We'll see.
So when Gameday U comes back, we'll send it to the remote team for call-outs, final words, and score predictions.
Welcome back to Gameday U. I'm sad that you guys just missed out on a great conversation about Parker's natural curls and whether or not he should grow a beard. So leave your comments below on that. But it is time for final words and score predictions. But first, let's discuss what a win for the Sooners would mean against the Cyclones in Ames. Shannon?
What a win would mean for OU. I feel like I'm introing like a essay or something. But resilience. Resilience is what a win would mean. It will prove that OU can bounce back and that a loss just doesn't affect them at all. But what we need here is to turn a bad thing good. Coming out of Kansas State, we need to step up and prove that we can beat Iowa State and that our defense is going to work together, our offense and special teams, all three correlating. I said that earlier, but it's really just a need to look up from here. It's a need to look up for here, but it's also it's a time for the coaches to really just prove their worth and prove that they can lead all three teams together. The gelling and the chemistry is what really needs to be there. And if they can win, they can prove that they're resilient, and it will show that they are resilient. That they still dominate the Big 12, despite what Caroline has to say. OU, if they win, are the domination of the Big 12.
It's hard for me to say that this game means anything for Oklahoma if they win, because let's be clear here. Iowa State has beaten Oklahoma twice since 1961. The Sooners should be expecting to go to Ames and roll the Cyclones because they're a better football team. So I don't buy into this game meaning anything more or less for Oklahoma. The standard remains the same, and Lincoln Riley and Alex Grinch have been saying that all week. The standard remains the same. Oklahoma should be going into Ames with the expectation that they're going to win and be 2-1 late Saturday night.
But they can't get too ahead of themselves as well. I think that they still need to keep level heads and just really play their game, not being affected by anybody else.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what the standard should mean for the Sooners, is that that's the expectation.
All right, I told our producers and directors that we would keep this short and not argue, but I must say, number one, I'm not a Big 12 hater. And number two, Parker, Iowa State almost came here last year and almost beat us. Just remember that. And number three, next week when if we beat Iowa State, you better not come on this show and say this is an impressive win after everything that you've just said. But for me, I think that a win for OU is just that championship mentality. We've got to get back into the groove of our champ U. We've got to get those recruits back on board with us. So I don't think it's going to mean anything more or less than mentality. So let's go into what are we going to expect from Iowa State.
I think that we're going to expect a really solid defensive game from Iowa State, especially if Rattler plays like he did last week against Kansas State. The ISU defense will eat them alive. I do expect to see linebackers Latrell Bankston, we talked about Mike Rose and Jaquan Bailey earlier, to have huge games, and especially since the Cyclones have that home field advantage and it's Rattler's first game on the road, it could be very intimidating to Rattler, so we need him to keep a level head and we need to see how he responds to that, whether it's going to be good, bad, or otherwise. But I think that the Cyclones offense is also going to benefit greatly off the defense. So I think if both of those units working together, I keep saying that, but both OU and ISU need to have their units gel and work together and just keep up with the team. Keep up with the team, and I really think that the solid defense is what ISU is going to come out with. Strong, solid defense, especially since we lost last week. And that's what they know, and that's what their coaches are probably telling them.
I think you're going to see a lot of Breece Hall on the offensive side of the football for the Cyclones. This is a guy that's one of the most talented skill position players, not just in the Big 12, but in the entire country. Rushed for 3 touchdowns last week against TCU, including a 75-yarder. He's going to be the bread and butter for Iowa State on the offensive side. And that's not to diminish what Brock Purdy is able to do at the quarterback position, but Iowa State will be rolling into this game with a run-first mentality, I do believe, and that starts with Hall. And the Oklahoma front seven will have their hands full, keeping a guy of that caliber to limited production on Saturday night.
I think the score is going to be low, honestly. I think OU at this point is an open book. There's not going to be much on film that someone can't break down and stop, and I think we're going to see that a lot with an average team like Iowa State. So last year they came here 42-41. Do you guys think that it's going to be a similar game, or do you think that OU is going to pull out? You don't have to give your score predictions just yet, but what do you guys think it's going to be like?
I'd say that OU is going to pull out and dub big time, giving you a little sneak peek of what I have to say later, but I think OU is going to take the cake on this one.
I don't want to tip my hand, so let's get straight to the call-outs.
Okay, so let's go ahead with a call-outs. From what we've seen so far this season, who needs to step up for the Sooners?
Oh boy, I have to say the secondary. The secondary 100% needs to step up, and we saw that from last week. They were not on their A game, and we need guys like Delarian Turner-Yell and Brian Asamoah, who we talked about earlier, to really be leaders and just bring all they got. So I do have to say the secondary, and I really do think that they need to be better down the stretch. They had so many guys blowing past them. They just need to get on their horse and get going.
They do not look like upperclassmen. That is for sure.
They do not look like upperclassmen, and it's hard to see, but
Parker.
I feel like I've harped on this a lot today, but Lincoln Riley, I'm calling you out going into this Saturday night game
You think you're that
against
important?
Iowa State. I am calling you out, Lincoln Riley, because here's the deal. The miscues that the Sooners displayed in all three facets of the game last week, offense, defense, and special teams, those come back to you as head coach. And here's the thing, the fact that the Sooners took their foot off the gas 20 minutes from the finish line, that also comes back to you. You are ultimately responsible for the Sooners' shortcomings in terms of their mentality and their ability to cope with a swing in momentum. And look, here's the thing. You're going to Ames on Saturday night. Iowa State's wearing those blackout uniforms. Oklahoma hasn't lost back-to-back regular season games since 1999. Iowa State is going to be hungry to kick you while you're down. You can't let that happen. So Lincoln, it starts with you tonight.
Wow.
I'm ready to see that. I like that call out. That's a good one. Lincoln Riley
Calling
for
the
sure.
shots. All right, well, I have an upperclassman. I've talked a lot about them today, but I'm going with TJ Pledger. His play is just downright sloppy, and it has been, and it was last year. And his job is about to get taken by a freshman. But when it does, we still need you on the depth chart, man. You had 13 carries last weekend for only 41 yards. Stay on your feet. You have experience. You know how to play. And quite honestly, you need to be that right-hand man for Spencer Rattler, and you're just not. So get it together. After that, we have final words. Now let's just give our final words for Oklahoma. But before they take the field in Ames this evening, Shannon, what's your final word for the Crimson and Cream?
My final word is closer. What they need to do is dominate the line of scrimmage early and really set their place. I think they just need to finish, close, and snap back from last week. Not much more to say, but it just needs to happen. They need to close the game.
I've said it before, I'll say it again. On paper, Oklahoma's a better football team than Iowa State. The issue is, last week, Oklahoma was a better football team on paper against Kansas State, but the Wildcats came out on the winning end. This week, Sooners, you don't need to be spectacular, but you do need to be stable. And that is my final word. My final word is stable. The Sooners need to play consistent, above average football for 60 minutes, and that will be good enough to get it done against Iowa State. Because they were spectacular for 40 minutes last week and atrocious for 20 minutes. That'll put a 1 in the loss column at the end of the day. 60 minutes of stable, solid football will put a 1 in the win column for the Sooners. And so stable is my final word for Oklahoma tonight.
I like that word. Now my word is realistic. This kind of is for you guys, for the entire Sooner Nation, but also for the players. Be realistic with your ability. Be realistic with the team you're playing. Be realistic with how much game you have left to play. And quite honestly, quit going into it thinking you're better than everyone. After that, let's go into our predictions for OU Iowa State. Last but not least, 2 weeks ago, Parker was able to predict a shutout. Last week, I predicted that K-State would win. So Shannon, it is your time to shine, girl.
It is my time to shine. I'm predicting 52-38. Before you say that's too high of a score, I really do think that OU can come out hot, and I think that they are going to dominate the first and second half and get their stuff together. So 52-38.
I think Iowa State scores a few. I think Oklahoma scores a few more. This is going to be your typical Big 12 shootout. I don't think it's going to be near as highly scoring affair as you mentioned, Shannon, but I say 41-31, the Sooners on the winning end tonight.
I'm going kind of low. I'm going to go 35-30 OU this time, you guys. Boomer Sooner all the way. I don't really think I have to explain myself much other than the fact that they're going to be able to look at tape. They're going to be able to make big plays against us. I don't see the score being very high. But that is all from us here on the beautiful South Oval. So for myself, Parker, and Shannon, be sure to tune in next week. We're going to take it back to the studio team when we come back. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome back to Game Day U. We have a little bit of time left, so let's wrap up the show with our picks for Week 5 of college football. First off, Ashley, which game should people at home have their TV screen on today?
I think that people should be watching Ole Miss and Kentucky this weekend. And I say that because I think Ole Miss is going to take home the W. And I think it's a fun SEC matchup. We saw Ole Miss play Florida last week, Kentucky, Auburn. And we have Lane Kiffin in his first year at Ole Miss and a Mark Stoops Kentucky team that has kind of shown themselves. They're a little bit established. And Kentucky gave up a lot of points last weekend. They had 3 turnovers against Auburn. But I think Ole Miss is going to pull this one out, and I think it's going to be a really good win for them against Kentucky.
Do you think Lane Kiffin was a good coaching hire there at Ole Miss?
I think so. Yeah, I think this is his last shot, though, to really prove it. So he's had a lot of chances.
Right. I think it's just his offensive ability. I mean, if you watch the first quarter or first half, really, of the Ole Miss Florida game, it's very competitive.
It is.
Ole Miss is running up the field, up and down on Florida, making him look like OU's defense.
Florida's defense was horrible.
Missed so many tackles.
Oh my gosh, it was atrocious.
I'm going to say my game to watch this week is Memphis and SMU. This will be a high-scoring affair, 40s and 50s. Brady White and Shane Buechele returning for Memphis and SMU respectively, both having over 3,900 passing yards. White with 33 touchdowns, Buechele with 34. It's going to be a high-scoring game. And the breakout player, or the player to watch, would be Ulysses Bentley IV for SMU. He has 36 carries for 780 yards and 7 touchdowns so far. And this could be considered an upset as Memphis is ranked 25th, and they're going on the road to Dallas to play the Ponies. So watch out for that one.
So this matchup kind of reminds me a lot of a Big 12 matchup. It's going to be high-scoring, and, they're going to have to get going.
Yeah. If you can't get it going against either of these teams, you're going to get smoked. You're going to get smoked for sure.
Yep. Okay, so I'm staying right here in the Big 12 with my game to watch this week, and that's Kansas State and Texas Tech. It's in Manhattan, and it's just going to be really exciting considering the weeks that both these teams have come off of. I mean, you have Texas Tech, who just came off of a super upsetting loss against Texas last week. Very heartbreaking. And then you have Kansas State coming off of a high, beating third-ranked Oklahoma at home. So let's see what this matchup's going to bring. I think that it's going to be extremely high-scoring. And I know K-State's pretty up and down, but I think that they're going to end up winning this game. Texas Tech can score and make big plays, but it's going to be really interesting to see what they do coming off that loss. And the Red Raiders are currently 1-1 on the road, and K-State is currently favored by 2.5 points. But I think this game is going to be super close. It's going to be a shootout.
I agree.
High scoring.
I think it's going to be a really close game. I think Texas Tech could win this game.
I think it's going to be right there. It's going to be pretty dead even.
I really like
Shootout.
their head coach, and I like what they have going on at Texas Tech. And I think they're just going to keep getting better and better, and I think they're going to be a competitor in the Big 12 in these next few years.
I think so too. It may not be this year, but I think Texas Tech is going to be on the come out.
Right, I agree. I think T.J. Vasher and Alan Bowman might be the best wide receiver quarterback combo right now in the Big 12. I mean, Vasher, 6'3", 6'4", can absolutely, and Bowman can throw the ball all over the field. They really can get open whenever they want to. It's just going to be a matter of if Texas Tech can do what OU couldn't do, and that is just getting open and getting deep downfield. Because we know what Texas Tech does; they can put up points, and we'll see if K-State can keep up with them.
All right. So with that being said, let's break down some more key matchups. First, we've got Boston College and UNC. Who do you got?
I have UNC, of course, Sam Howell, big QB, but I think that overall UNC is just going to be the stronger team over Boston College. Boston College almost lost to Texas State, guys. They had to come back and win that one, too. And I just think that they're not going to be a match for UNC, no match for Carolina. And I just don't think that Boston College has a good enough defense for Carolina's really fast offense. So I have UNC.
I'm sorry. I mean, I think you're dead wrong. Of course BC's going to come out with the win. I mean, Sam Howell, yes. No. 2 interceptions in the first game. That's embarrassing. Fighting Mac Browns. And BC's forced 3 turnovers in 2 games. I mean, that's very impressive. And the impact player for BC will be Zay Flowers. He has 182 reception yards and a touchdown through 2 games. I think the Fighting Mac Browns are going to go down, and he will cry after the game.
I don't think so. I think you're so wrong.
Well, we'll see.
Ashley, I'm jumping on the UNC train with Sam
Yes.
Howell. So after 2 straight weeks off due to COVID issues, the Tar Heels are going to be back in action, and they're going to be ready to go today. I think that they're going to pull out the victory. And Boston College maybe 2-0, but like you said, Texas State, come on. And they barely pulled off that win. And so UNC is just 1-0, but we've kind of forgotten about them with all their COVID issues and just the games getting postponed and canceled. So I think that they're going to be back this week. They're going to have to shake off some rust, but I think they're going to be solid today.
Yeah, I agree. Just getting out of the rust in general. I mean, playing 2 or 3 weeks ago, and now hopefully Hal's picked it up by then. But I mean, you really never know. So.
Yep, we'll have to see.
We'll have to see. Okay, so transitioning, we're going to have Bama and A&M in the SEC. Ashley, who's going to win it?
I think Alabama's going to win this one easily. I already said I think Kellen Mond is a disaster. So I think that Bama will be all over A&M's offense, and that is going to be a problem for them. I don't think that they have the I don't think that they can contend with them, and I don't think Kellen Mond can handle it. So I think Bama is going to score big, and I think that this is going to be a really easy win for Alabama. And I think that this is really Kellen Mond's last chance to prove if he's got what it takes. And I don't think Texas A&M has what it takes. They're ranked number 13. They were 10 last week, and like we discussed, barely made it out against Vanderbilt. So,
you think Jimbo Fisher will be on the hot seat anytime soon?
No.
Yeah.
No, why not?
Because it's, what is this, only his second year?
Yeah.
So I think that he had so much success at Florida State. I think he needs to get his own guys in there. Recruiting is a huge thing.
I mean, I feel like recruiting, A&M's been recruiting for years. They've had top 10 classes after top 10 class. And what do we see? 8-4, 8-5.
I think it helps to get your own guys in there
7-6.
too.
I mean, yeah, you can argue the best guys. You're getting the best athletes in the country no matter what. I think they're underperforming like they always do. The last time they had a good season, like we were talking about before the show, was with Manziel in 2012. There's just no way A&M will compete in this game. They're going to get absolutely steamrolled, 49-10, 42-10. Take your pick. Mond will score a touchdown in the first half. It'll be 7-7. They'll be done from there. He's overrated. He said before last season he was the best quarterback in the SEC. He was dead wrong. He's terrible. 17 points against Vanderbilt. That is terrible, unacceptable. Mac Jones, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle. It's over. It's not going to be close. It's not going to be close at all.
So I'm going to keep on rolling with the Tide. I think that they're going to have a big win today. And Bama is super talented on both sides of the ball. On offense, they have their quarterback, Mac Jones, and with so many weapons to work with. I mean, running back Najee Harris and receivers Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith. And so on top of just their offense, their defense is also incredible this year, led by middle linebacker Dylan Moses, who is extremely solid.
And coming off that injury too.
Yes.
So he's healthy.
Yes.
He's healthy.
Yes. And let's not forget, this A&M team struggled with Vanderbilt last week. They looked bad in their 17-12 victory. And Vanderbilt, they just looked really, really sloppy against Vanderbilt.
So do you think any SEC team can beat Bama this year?
Ooh, shoot. I think Florida might be able
Florida?
to.
Okay.
I don't agree.
I
don't think Florida can do it. I don't think anyone can beat Bama this year.
I think it'll happen in the SEC championship game. But I think that if there is going to be a year when we see two teams from the SEC make the playoff, I think it's this year.
I agree.
I think it's this year. And so I think that if Florida can keep it tight in there in the SEC championship game, or Georgia, whoever ends up pulling, if Georgia can get their offensive issues sorted out, I think that this could be the year that we see this.
I think
sure.
Georgia's more likely to be more competitive against Alabama than Florida is.
Right. I think Florida would make a lot more of an interesting matchup. You have Mac Jones and Kyle Trask, a lot better passers than JT Daniels or DeJuan Mathis. So I definitely think I think Florida would be the better matchup for Alabama. But I mean, we'll just have to wait and see.
Yes. They've just got to sort through their quarterback issues at Georgia.
They do.
Oh my god.
But we have JT Daniels now.
Yes.
So
Thank goodness
I'm
he's
so
cleared.
excited to see how he's going to do this week.
I'm really, really excited to see how he's going to fit into this Georgia system.
I mean, let's see. Going against Auburn week 1, that's a tough matchup for sure.
It's the first top 10 matchup of the entire year.
Yes.
So it's going to be nuts. I don't know. I'm excited to see what happens. Some big games coming up. But next is another big-time SEC contest between the Auburn Tigers and Georgia Bulldogs. 2 top 10 teams. But who's going to leave this game victorious? Ashley?
I say that it's the Georgia Bulldogs who are going to be victorious at the end of this. I think that UGA has crazy good defense. The Auburn rushing last weekend was not very good. They only rushed for 91 total yards, and Bo Nix was their top rusher. Not what you want to see. You want to see someone else doing that, not your quarterback. And UGA safety, Richard LeCount, already has 2 interceptions this season, and that was only in their first game against Arkansas. And I think that Bo Nix is going to have to be incredibly accurate. No interceptions. You're going to give the game away if you do that. So I think with UGA's D, and Auburn has good D too, but I think that it's in Auburn's offense. I think that UGA is going to take this one home and win.
Auburn's O-line is weak too, and
Yes.
so I think that their defense is just really going to take advantage of that.
All right, I agree with you there. I think it's definitely going to be a defensive matchup. Not going to be anything we've seen in the SEC last week. With it was just like 51-29, or all these high-scoring games. It'll be 10-3 at halftime, maybe a 20-17 win. But I think Auburn's going to pull it out. I think the difference in this game is going to be the quarterback play. Bo Nix coming back, a pretty good freshman season, looking to avoid that sophomore slump that feels like everyone has gone through. I think he's going to get past it. I think having the receivers around him and Shivers at running back. I just think he's going to outplay JT Daniels. JT Daniels coming in, brand new system. You would think Pac-12 spread out offense. Georgia a little bit different, just because a more balanced attack. I don't know if he's going to be able to get in the rhythm against that tough Auburn front seven.
So this is one of the most historic matchups in the historic rivalries in the South, and it's the first top 10 matchup of the season. We all know Georgia has some really serious issues on offense, but I'm still going with the Bulldogs today just because their defense is elite. Their defense is so elite, and I think that they have a lot of depth too. I think this game's going to come down to their defense. If you just look at other teams around college football, you have guys playing an average of 50 to 60 snaps per game. At Georgia, you have enough depth that 12 to 15 guys are taking 30-something snaps per game. And there's just no drop-off at all. Up front on the D-line, you have Herring, Wyatt, and Jordan Davis. And they have 7 or 8 guys that you can just replace them with and keep going. And at outside linebacker, you have plenty of guys. At secondary, you have 3 to 4 corners, or three safeties and 3 to 4 corners that you could use. And not many teams have this luxury. Okay, so, and finally in Ames, Iowa, OU and Iowa State play tonight at 6:30 on ABC. Ashley, you got the Sooners or the Cyclones?
Okay, well, I have us, the Oklahoma Sooners, winning this game. I don't think that we're going to be let down again after last week. I think that OU was really let down. I think our football team was after last week, and I think we're going to come out better and stronger. We have history with Iowa State. We lose, but I think, like I said, we're going to do better. I think we are the better team. I think, like we've kind of talked about, I think we have to bring that defense again and do really well with it. And I don't think Spencer Rattler can make as many mistakes as he did last week either.
No, and I don't think he will make as many mistakes as he will either. I think he got rattled, and then from there it kind of just dropped off. I think OU's going to win this game. It's going to be fairly easy. They're going to win 41-24, 41-31. The score will look better than it actually is. We just don't lose on the road. Under Lincoln Riley, we've only lost 1 game on the road, and that was against a garbage call on the onside kick against KSU. I mean, I think the defense will come out and play better. Spencer will come out and play better. Good team win.
So I'm Sooner born and Sooner bred, but I just don't think today's going to be our day. And I think if we get an upset pulled on us, today is going to be it. We just have trouble with Iowa State, and that has been consistent throughout the years. So in 2016, we won by only 10. In 2017, Iowa State came to town and they upset us. They were a 31-point underdog when we had Baker Mayfield, and they came into our house, and that was our only loss that year up until the playoff. And in 2018, we won by 10 points, but last year, we only won by 1 point in the game here in Norman. So we've struggled with them here lately. So that's my hot take. But lastly, before we sign off, let's talk upset picks. Which underdog gets the win today?
All right, well, for me, I had La Tech over BYU. That didn't turn out so well, you guys. BYU won big, and if you were watching this game last night, you noticed how dominant BYU's defense was. They're super aggressive, and I think this is going to serve BYU really, really well. So I think that Tech has a good team, but not to compete against a team like BYU. They have really great offense too, high-flying, and there you go.
I'm going to take it on over to the SEC. I think Missouri is going to upset Tennessee. The game is at Neyland with reduced stadium capacity. We know playing there is very tough, but now, I mean, it feels like every year Tennessee, like A&M, they're back, they're going to compete, but they haven't competed in 20 years. I mean, let's be honest. Last week, Sean Robinson, quarterback from Missouri, transfer from TCU, 19 of 25, 189 yards, 76 completion percentage. He never really had much. He couldn't really throw the ball that much just because he was already down so much against Alabama. But I think they're going to go in there and Robinson's going to outplay Garantano.
So Boomer Sooner, but our defense, our run game, and our quarterback play has got to improve. I'm going with the upset today, Iowa State. Thank you so much for watching Game Day U here in Gaylord Hall at the University of Oklahoma. We'll be here next week, same time, same place. Keep up with the Game Day U on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Ashley Vandeveld, Stone Weber, and the whole crew, I'm Audrey Goodson. Have a fun and safe game day, and we'll see you next time.